In this video, we're going to look at some examples using a multidimensional array, a two-dimensional array. In this case, I'm declaring a two-dimensional array of ints called matrix. And we're declaring it as creating a new two-dimensional array of ints with 2 rows and 3 columns. All right, so once I have the array declared, I'm going to use some properties of the array to generate a statement to the user. And I'm going to say system.out.println. I'm going to tell them to enter, and I'm going to use the matrix length to tell them how many rows to enter. And then I'm going to get the length of row 0 to tell them how many columns to enter. And this works just fine because in this matrix we declared each row has the same number of columns. It's not a jagged array. And that's generally the case. All right, so once we tell the user how many rows and columns they're going to be entering, we have the nested for loops that we've talked about before. Nested for loops are used to process two-dimensional arrays. In this case, the outside loop is going to count the number of rows. So it's going to count from 0 to 1 because there are 2 rows, right? So the matrix.length is 2. So we'll count 0 and then 1. And then the inside for loop counts the columns. So we used column for the variable name in there. That makes things a little bit easier for people to understand, I think, when you use row and column for those indexes. Okay, and the column will count from 0 to however many columns are in that row. All our rows are going to have 3 columns. So it'll count 0, 1, 2, and then when it gets on row 1, it'll count 0, 1, 2 again. Okay, and then we're asking the user to enter an int, and we're storing that int in the row and column, whatever row and column that we are on. Now, let's go ahead and run that so we can see how it works. Enter 2 rows and 3 columns. So I'm going to put 1, 2, 3 in the first row, and I'll put 4, 5, and 6 in the second row. And you see I actually have something printing out my rows and columns. And I'm going to show you how that works here now. So after the user enters those, I am calling print array. And so print array is a method that accepts a two-dimensional array of ints. Okay, so I can pass my matrix, which is the variable for my two-dimensional array. I can pass that matrix to the print array method, which I wrote right here. So here's print array, and it's a void method. It just is going to print out data to the screen for us. And it is a two-dimensional array of ints as a parameter, and it's using the variable array for that to talk about the data that gets passed in. And it's using the same idea of 2 nested for loops. The first one counting the rows, and the second one counting the columns. Okay, and then for each row, it's using a print statement, not a print line, and it prints the value of that row and column, and then it prints a space afterwards. Okay. Once that inside for loop's done, it's doing a print line, which will send it to the next line. So when it goes back around, it'll go to the next row, and again, it'll print out, in this case, the 4, the 5, and the 6. So print 1, it prints for 2, it prints for 3, then it does a print line to force it to the second row, and then it prints everything on the same line and it gives us a nice little picture of an array. Now, if I get too big, so this isn't perfect. So I'm using some 2-digit numbers in here. You can see our rows and columns aren't perfectly straight up and down from one another because each one of them is a different size. So if you really want to make sure they print out in nice columnar format, nice straight columns, you need to do some formatting maybe if you're using ints up to 999, make sure you format each column so that it can hold maybe 5 digits. Use maybe a printf command with a formatter to make it print the same number of columns regardless of the length of the digits. And that'll keep everything in nice columnar form. So printing an array, nested for loop. Having the user enter the elements of an array, we use a nested for loop. Calling a method, we can pass in an array. So you can actually pass arrays to your methods. You could return arrays from your methods as well. So everything we did with regular arrays, you can do with two-dimensional arrays.